your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy walk.
Chrissie is hilarious.
Chrissie, have you ever heard of the comedian Basha K. Ali?
No, that sounds like something you yell out before you blow up a plane.
30 seconds remaining.
But you know what good thing to say? I dabbled in stand-up or something. I haven't been disrespectful to you at all.
I was very confused by the title, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's also what we call it when Ash takes off his shirt. I shouldn't be up here. I should be in school on the other side of the ocean. Hello, everybody. Hello. Happy March. Good to see you all here. Welcome to another episode of the Chrissie Mayr podcast. You can listen to this podcast, iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Rumble, Rockfin, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook for some reason. Sometimes Facebook bans my podcasts and calls them hate speech. Don't we love that? Nobody uses Facebook anymore anyway. Guys, today's guest, oh my God, I'm such a fan. I have such a girl crush. We got to chatting before we hit record, and I already am going to make her my Australian pen pal. We're going to chat about mom tips. We're basically the same age. We have basically the same sort of I'm going to assume we have the same upbringing just by the fact that we both watched Sex and the City growing up. She is the founder and CEO of Giggle, a female social media network. And we're going to talk about all the controversy that she has gone through with that. I'm sure she's been called a TERF. We're going to get into all of it. I'm so happy she's here. Welcome to the show, Sall Grover.
Thank you so much for having me. This is fun.
This is so fun. I have been watching all of your interviews, and I'm just so impressed with your just ability to slog through this kind of like legal shithole battle that you found yourself in. Just briefly explain to the people a little bit about your origin story and how you sort of found yourself fighting this ridiculous fight against a man who trying to join your, all female social network.
Yeah. So my first career was as a screenwriter. I moved to Hollywood at 24, got on a plane. I knew two people, and within a year I'd sold my first thing. I got signed to one of the top agencies, manager, got the whole thing, got a visa, all of that. So getting into the industry was pretty easy. Once I was in it, it was hell. My number one regret in life, after about 4 years, I should have just sat there and talked to myself and said, do you actually like this? None of this is fun. It was pre-Me Too. I mean, and it was as bad as as many people have heard. I think why it was sort of so specifically bad for me, it was just rampant sexual assault and harassment. I was very vulnerable because I was on a visa. I could only make money selling screenplays. And so there was a desperation that I had that maybe some other people didn't have that same level. You could take care of yourself in other ways. Anyway, and I was very, very stupidly very vocal about how vulnerable I was. So it wasn't great. And so I moved there in 2009. In 2018, I came back to Australia. I was broken, completely broken. And I went into therapy just to get some tools to recover from it all. And it was actually in therapy that my therapist said, you needed a strong female support network in your life, because Hollywood and so much of the world these days, it's so isolating, almost by design. And it was this light bulb moment. I was like, I could see how things would have played out differently, even just psychologically, if I'd had a strong female support network. And then I was just talking about that with my mom. She was like, well, what if we created an app for women? Basically what it turned out to be, the idea was that you could have a female support network in the palm of your hand, no matter what you were doing. It originally was just going to be a roommates app, because I I'd moved from LA to New York. It was like my last ditch effort in 2016 to like sort of hold on to the dream. And I was, I went from having my own apartment, my own grown-up life, to like needing to rent a room. And I went on like all the different places.
Girl, I know that. I had 3 roommates from Craigslist, okay?
Yeah.
And this, you're talking like the early aughts,
Yeah.
when did I move out of my parents' house? 2011. So I had 3 different Craigslist roommates, which is like very an unsafe way to find a roommate. But I did it 3 times because it's New York. You're like, I moved there to do comedy. This is what all the comedians do. You get at least 1 roommate. Sometimes you get 4 roommates because that's how you pay rent. And
it was just like, I got like, it was, things like, you can live here rent free if you walk around naked, like there's foot fetish stuff.
Oh gosh.
And I was just like going like, can there be one thing that we do where we're not like sexually harassed? So that was the initial idea. But then when we started developing it, we were like, there's like lots of other reasons why, or in ways we could use this. We had like, in the end, like lesbian dating on there, sort of just places to connect for more like just general emotional support, freelance work. Like there was like a female only Twitter. I say was because it's not online at the moment. Right? Sometimes I mention that it hasn't been online because of the next part of the story. So basically I didn't know, because I was in sort of, I suppose, like a Me Too and I Hate Trump bubble, like many of us were in like 2018, 2019. I didn't know that there had been a big zeitgeist shift where not only were men actually claiming to be women, but people were believing them. Like, just blew my mind.
They were the victim class du jour. And
I'd heard of trans, like I'd heard of it, and I'd heard of LGBT, and I'd been like, like, sure, I trust the LGBT, like I support that. So if there's another letter, like that sounds great. Didn't think any more of it. And then, so February 2020, we were just still doing beta testing the App Store and Google Play. A handful of women around the world knew about the app. And I woke up one morning to thousands upon thousands of men on the app. And they'd found it. They were left 1-star reviews, like canceled right out of the gate. Like you can't, on the App Store and Google Play, once you've got thousands upon thousands of 1-star reviews, like you can't get out of that black hole.
That's horrible.
And so, which I didn't know that at the time, thank God, but it would have been even more depressing. Cancelled cord transphobic called TERF. And like when you're first experiencing that, I was really affected by it. I'd never been called a bigot or anything before. And all of the trans rights activists told me to educate myself. And I was like, that's fair. Okay, I will go and educate myself. And literally, it took moments to go like, total massive TERF.
Like, that's me, all right.
Yeah, but I just spent a few months just reading everything. There was this, especially on Twitter, like this small selection of women who were speaking out, some using their real names, a lot being anonymous, more so of them being anonymous. And I was just, you cross-reference everything they were saying. I'd go and research it. I was listening to and reading everything that I could. And I'd said to my mom, in terms of the app, I was like, let's just tread water. This will blow over. Because I was like, it's so stupid. I thought in my head, like this would blow over in about 4 months. I was really wrong about that.
And this is just because you created an app for women only.
For women.
It's not like you told a joke or, fought with somebody on Twitter with a big following. You just created something.
Yeah, just created an app for women. And what they were angry about is, so obviously to create a female-only online space, it would be like, well, how do you keep it female-only? And it was actually my dad who had found out the way to do it. It was AI, essentially. Basically, it was just this software. Like I didn't invent this. It was you take a photo, you take a selfie, and the AI determines like male or female. Because newsflash, you actually can tell. Like the good old human eye can tell if someone's male or female by looking at them.
Our skulls are different. Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of different points on the face. That's just on the face. Because it's
just like a selfie of your neck, please, so we can see Adam's apple or not.
You can tell with hands. Like you can.
Oh yeah.
You can tell.
Hands
like,
for sure.
Like everything. Like even from the back. I've actually got a funny story about that I can tell later. But that's I think what they were offended by was that I was basically had created something that said that you could tell if someone is male or female by looking at them, which even in their own stupid ideology is sort of, it's kind of funny that they were so angry about that, or what I assume that that's what they were angry about. Because then, I mean, I think that that's actually just sort of proving what our overall point is that they are deranged and nothing makes sense. And, you know, they have this whole thing about passing, or that you don't have to pass or anything like that. So I think that this confronted that.
Mm-hmm. Any kind of reality check is triggering
Yeah.
for them. And right,
Yeah.
the AI is modeled after what I imagine the human eye sees and what
Yeah.
everyday people would
Yeah.
determine.
And
So
we would monitor it. Like, so, I mean, it worked. I mean, it worked how technology works, which is not 100%. We didn't even have it set to 100%. So there was women that would be monitoring it behind the scenes, like it was a job, to make sure that it was female only. And so occasionally, like, a man would go through, I mean, maybe even once a day, and would just remove him. Like, it wasn't, like, it was just part of the workday. And if you had, I suppose, like, you know, if I had responded to every email, for example, that a man would send about it, like, my full-time job would have just been responding to emails from men. So I would just ignore them. Like, I just was like, no, I'm here to do something for women. You are all irrelevant to
not
me.
fight with them. Yeah.
So, yeah. And so basically, so that's that part of the origin story. So we're treading water, and then cut to January 2022, and I received an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint from a man, and citing gender identity discrimination to settle. Like, the AHRC, how it works is basically they try and do sort of conciliation, mediation, so it doesn't go to federal court. Basically, if they're working correctly, they're supposed to interpret the law correctly and settle an issue. But
Like
it was very
like
clear.
a therapist, sort of, or like more like a lawyer, counselor.
Like,
okay.
Yeah. It's definitely sort of more mediation like that. But it was very clear that they did not care that I might have any kind of rights. And there's issues with the law in Australia, and we can get into that because we are very much like the warning for everyone else in the world in that sense. But so I said no to settling it in the AHRC because I would have had to let all men who claim to be women on, moderate the content so that men who claim to be women weren't offended by what actual women were saying, pay him $20,000 and apologize to him. And I was like, I'm doing none of that. Like, absolutely no way. And I was 15 weeks pregnant when I got the complaint. So by this time, like, going back and forth, I was late second, early third trimester. And I was just like, no, like, I'm not going to go sit in.
You gotta make sure you're like controlling your stress, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, no. And then, so he filed in federal court. And then the case was finally heard in federal court last year. Got a decision in it's August of last year, and he won. The judge declared that sex is changeable. It's the most insane ruling like ever. I mean, it's obviously all completely wrong. So I'm currently in the appeal, and the appeal will be heard in August this year, but we've got other stuff in the lead up to it. Like, the next hearing is actually in April. So we're in a money fight at the moment. So that's another interesting story. But yeah, basically that's what it all is. My life has been turned upside down because I created an app for women, and while I will eventually do that again, and under no circumstances will there be a man on it. We've just got to fight to make sure that that's possible.
How come you, Sal, are so much stronger than a lot of women who sort of call themselves trans allies or non-TERF feminists? What sets you apart? Why are you somebody who just has none of that at all? There's no wiggle room for you. There's no convincing you. There's no, have you always felt this way? Was there like a moment for you where you're just, it's black and white?
When I was back in 2020, when I was educating myself on the issue, I mean, had I started reading everything and being like, oh, okay, like, there's something here, like, there's something real that's going on, here's the evidence, I mean, maybe that would have been different, but it doesn't exist. Like, gender ideology is complete nonsense, and it doesn't take long when you start actually reading what it's all about to realize that. Also, in terms of just sticking up for my rights and other women's rights, I mean, when I came back to Australia in 2018, and knew that I wasn't going to go back to Hollywood, even though I didn't enjoy it anymore, it was my initial dream. It's what I wanted to do. And the reason it was so horrible was because of these horrible men. So I feel like horrible men stole the first thing I wanted to do in life from me.
Oh,
I'm not going to let them steal a second one.
yeah.
Just no. So they sort of, in that sense, they just sort of messed with the wrong woman, where I'm just like, I have 0 fucks left to give. Like also the other part of it is, with this specifically, I know I'm right. They are men. They are not women. So when you know that you were right about something, which is so rare, because usually we have some humility, like,
Yeah.
usually there's a shred of doubt. Like, I remember even in Hollywood, like, I would say to my managers that when I did occasionally tell them something had happened and I knew that it was morally so wrong, but they would say that it wasn't, I would have to hold on to that sanity of just going, no, this is morally wrong. Even that was different, because there is more gray area in morality, but this is just basic biological facts. Like, we're all here because of male and female. There's just no other way to look at it. And it's like, you can be a feminine man. I completely support that. Or a masculine woman. I don't care. And if we were in a movement of just sort of playing with those different ideas, like we sort of were in, like, that like David Beckham metrosexual era in the early 2000s.
The early
Yeah,
like, it's all fine. Wear your tight pants.
Yeah, that was so much more interesting. Of like,
be a barista. Who cares?
Yeah, and of like, roles in society and stuff like that. Like, there's interesting conversations to have there, because there is a little bit of like, some things that are sort of just, it's like, of course, women have to have the babies, and so there is something that stems from that. But there's a lot after that that you can play around with. It's really, really interesting. That, like, if that was the zeitgeist right now, I would be on the other side. I would be there going, like, of course men can be feminine and women can be masculine, and we don't have to have sort of stupid, rigid rules.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the fight we're in. We are in a fight where they are literally saying up is down.
And I think a lot of these okay, I think, overall speaking, mostly trans women are men with really disgusting fetishes, and trans men tend to be like autistic women and girls that have been led astray, fallen prey to the social contagion, and it's a bit more heartbreaking. Whereas, the trans women, they're dudes, and they move about and act like dudes still, even as they try to be women. They're confrontational, they're aggressive, they are
do you know what?
they're not ladylike.
The differences in the sexes, I actually would argue, is no more clearer than from the two groups that are currently trying to deny it.
Mm-hmm.
Men who call themselves women act more like men than the average man. They are so, like, it's stereotypical toxic masculinity. It's so that when people are like, oh, but they're putting in effort. It's like, no, like, literally saying I'm a trans woman is literally something only a man can say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're acting like men just by saying that. And then with the women who think they're men, they are so many of them, most of them, they are so submissive.
Yeah.
And I just like, and quite almost like that, like, stereotypical, like, girly, feminine, like when they're just sort of like, they're having like these like testosterone parties, and they're giggling like through showing off their mastectomy cells. I mean, it's like something out of a horror movie. It's horrific.
It is horrible. And and these women,
there's a pillow fight element to it where I'm just like, this is like, if it wasn't so evil, it would almost be comical.
Mm-hmm. It is evil. And these women a lot of them have been abused. A lot of them, it's more about removing any trace of femininity necessarily than them really wanting to be about men. I think a lot of these women just want to kind of zero out and be as bland, as flat, as neutral as they can, because that means no more abuse, no more attracting.
I completely understand why, if you are a teenage girl right now and you're looking at that Instagram / OnlyFans aesthetic and thinking like,
I can't compete.
Yeah. Or just even that's what is expected of me, I would have recoiled at that as a teenager. I would have been really intimidated and probably quite disgusted by it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're sort of faced, there are these sort of two options. It's the OnlyFans or it's trans.
Wow.
And I get why they're trying to escape womanhood, and it's why, I mean, hopefully I've met like lately more, or heard from more young, like sort of early 20s women who have realized that sort of the turf option of just being yourself
Be a
and
turf. Why you get,
and just being a woman who has boundaries and self-respect, and I mean that's really pretty much the only prerequisite, that is an option, which is great.
Yeah, and we're lucky. We're the same age. We grew up at a time without social media, and now it's like the kids you're talking to in their 20s, even though they're adults, we call them kids still. It's all it's kind of everything's exacerbated because of social media. It's not like we had our hobbies, we had our in real life activities, and it's very easy to go down like a rabbit hole, or your algorithm's going to serve you up more and more. You could be hate scrolling, hate watching something that doesn't really define you. You're just like, oh, and then pretty soon your algorithm is serving you up more and more of the same stuff, and you're gonna be like, you will come to the conclusion of like, well, yeah, it is either OnlyFans, sell your sexuality, or go neutral, go trans, chop it off.
Just before we started recording, we just started sort of talking about Sex in the City, because that was the big cultural thing that was when we were young, like late teens, early 20s. That was the most influential thing in mainstream for women. And it was such a phenomenon. And
there's the best show. It was exciting. It was like we really looked up to these women.
Because especially, you're like late teens, early 20s, you've got no idea what adulthood is like yet, and you're watching these women and you're thinking, okay, they're making this look great. It is funny now watching it when like they're 32 and you're like, oh, they're so young and adorable. It's when now like you're older than them. But
I used to think Samantha was so old, and she was like, what, maybe 40 or something?
We're Samantha's age now. But, I mean, my lawyer and I were actually just talking about Sex and the City recently, because we're like, as you get older, I don't think it's a matter of you become more conservative at all. I think that framing it, there's always this attempt to frame it that way. I don't think that's what it is. I think hopefully you become wiser.
Or you become more yourself, and you're less doubt.
And also, it only takes a few traumatic experiences for you to actually start realizing how important boundaries are.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time you're in your mid to late 30s, early 40s, you're just like, oh, no.
You go, I know what happens here. Yeah, I've seen this play out. Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think back to some dating situations I had in my early 20s that just would not fly now. Like the things that, you stuck around for.
Yes.
There was a guy, I was completely and utterly in love with him, and he could not have cared less whether I was alive or dead. And I was trying to make it my mission to make this guy realize that I was worthy of, I don't know, being treated like a human.
Yeah.
And now, I'm just like, oh, Sal, what were you doing? But I mean, it's, live and learn, but yeah.
Sex and the City was extremely influential. It was, first of all, it was like the first time we actually had cable in the house. It was like, ooh, that was exciting too. And you're like, you're seeing these women are able to afford these apartments. They don't have roommates. That's number one. They're living alone in Manhattan, no less. They don't have to go to Astoria, Queens. They don't have to go to Flatbush.
And she was writing one column a week. Like,
yeah,
seriously, like it's just like something that was so irrelevant. But no, I mean, I think about it all the time of just of that zeitgeist that we came of age in. And if you sort of compare it to what women are coming of age in now. So at the moment, it's this like, I know, selling your sexuality is the most empowering thing you can do. I mean, that is just clearly nonsense. But then what we came of age in was that like, you don't need a man.
Yes,
very much. Like that hooked me. I lived my 20s and 30s with that mentality. And there's a part of it that's just like, that is natural to me, that I am independent. I like my alone time. It's all fine. And I'm single now. But I think it's actually was really bad. I think it was a huge mistake to basically just shame women of like, that it's wrong to even want one.
It's horrible.
Like Charlotte was always sort of shamed as like the desperate one. It was like, no. Like there's a reason why now, like, I mean, if you watch, I mean, the show now is just so horrible, but even just she does actually have the most fulfilled life.
Yes. Yeah, and she's looked down on. They almost kind of like treat her, they like infantilize her a little bit. They almost treat like, "Oh, Charlotte, like head pat, you're stupid," even though she's like a an
Yeah,
art curator. Like she's really smart, and she just wants to meet a nice guy and start a family. And the other
yeah.
women are like, "We're gonna do brunch later, bitch," you know.
And I just sometimes wonder if, like, just that sort of breakdown in sort of that dynamic of dating culture, or it being like just, you know, sort of just a very normal goal to want to get married, where that's left women now sort of, you know, I've read, there's more and more stories coming out of women in their late 40s of suddenly realizing, hang on, I'm not happy. I'm single and now I'm actually bored and I want more in my life, and my window's passed. Like I can't get it now. And then you've just got, like, I don't know, men, like there's, you know, there's this sort of problem happening with men as well. And just no one knows how to talk to each other or anything anymore. And I think there's blame on both sides for that.
It gives you, being a parent really gives you purpose. If you're a man or a woman, it focuses you up. It
Oh,
really like helps you figure shit out quickly
you
and
know,
helps you grow up.
yeah, I got to like 35 and I was like, yeah, I mean, I was developing the app then, and I was like, I think it was before, it would have been before I was canceled, but I was like, you know, I was like, I love what I'm doing. I was like really, really happy. I felt really fulfilled professionally. Like I had this like goal. I knew where I wanted it to go. I haven't even started working on that now because I've had such a distraction. But I did have this like moment of this massive pang of, there has to be more than this. Like I can't just have work in my life. Like I'm like, I wanted, I was like, there has to just be something else. Like there was an empty feeling. And I was like, oh, I actually think that I would like to have a baby. And then eventually did, when Belle was born when I was 37. And like now when I like look at her, and even though like some days are tough, I'm like, God, imagine if I hadn't done this, I would have been so angry. I love it. It is the most fun thing I've ever done. Even
So
when
fun.
I'm there sometimes like about to pass out at 7:30 at night and she's just like,
It's so fun. It's the only job you can get and be unqualified for, that you can learn on the job, and no one's gonna, you won't get fired. I mean, short of abuse, right? But like, you know, you'll figure it out, and it's like exciting because it really does all come naturally to you. And
yeah. And it's just when like just little things now, like Belle's just asked for a glass of water and I'll give it to her and she goes, thank you, mommy. And it's just like,
oh, like a little
like,
person.
yeah, it just like gives you a feeling unlike anything else in the world. And you just, unless you, I mean, I just sort of think that narrative of that, you know, that women shouldn't do that, I think was a bit, I think it was wrong. I think feminism has never tackled motherhood particularly well because it's hard. I mean, feminism is tasked with basically trying to sum up something for 4 billion people. Like it's just not, like we've got this one like political ideology for half the population. Like men don't have that. It's just because it's not specific to their sex. But I'm like, it would be nice if we had, but we've got all the different waves of feminism, and I suppose it works in that way. And you've sort of got this very, what are they calling liberal feminism now, which I think is just an utter failure. But it is, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, there's some women who are going to go for that more because we are all different. Like the only thing that unites women is that we're just female. But we are all different within that and how we want to live our lives. So in that sense, even though there's certain things like in different branches or waves of feminism that I don't agree with, you know, you do have to sort of find, you know, where you sit with everything. And I just think that, yeah, it's just never tackled motherhood that well because
You're right.
the only thing women can do to, oh, you shouldn't do it at all. And you're like, hang on, there's a huge gap there.
And that aspect of feminism to me comes off as having a mega chip on its shoulder, because I was like not like this qualifies me in any way, but I became interested in feminism in college. I was a women's studies minor, so like oh, it's just a few classes, but like I was intrigued by the whole thing. And I did raised in the kind of Sex in the City era, very much in the I don't need a man place for a, I would say all of my 20s. And I'm pursuing stand-up comedy in New York City, living with roommates, but like living the dream, right? Doing the thing. So nobody around me is really like having kids. All my friends are all also living the dream. Like,
I was in LA, and so you're in like LA or New York. Everyone's in an arrested development. Like, I mean, I was 31 and still living like I was 19 effectively.
Same. Yeah. And everyone has roommates, because when you're in your early 30s living with roommates doing stand-up, you go, well, okay, there's people around me in their 40s doing the exact same thing, people in their 50s doing the exact same thing. And then I met my husband, and I was like, wait, this is the first really good man I've been with, dated. I feel safe, I feel secure, like. And then I started to think, oh wow, like, the idea of marriage scared the shit out of me. Yeah, I had to unravel my feelings about marriage, because I'm like, wow, I'm with somebody I'm actually considering that with. And I had to realize you're not going to become your parents if you have a healthy, good relationship. And then I had to unravel the kid thing. And I was like, and then I started to think, like, similar to you, like, I don't want to regret not doing it. I don't want to. And I realized now, looking back, those I don't want to regret it feelings were actually like, you do want to have a baby. Like, this is something you would be great at, and it would be so horrible. Same as you. Like, he's the best. As soon as he came out, I'm like, oh, this is the best thing I've ever done. I'm like a pretty good stand-up far and away. I'm a better mom than I will ever be. Comedian, like, on my worst day, still, this is the best thing I've ever done.
It is the most fun and rewarding thing. And you know what? I like how much busier my life is. Like, I love juggling work and motherhood and trying to work out how to use, for lack of a better phrase, do it all. But it's like, no, what it does is it means with your work, it makes you make better choices.
You do. And all the meaningless shit gets filtered away. The fake friends, the people that don't deserve your time, that falls away. The sort of like endless, shopping, caring about like late, right? You're like, oh, I gotta tweak my wardrobe. I have to be like, do I need to have my colors done? Am I have to not wear skinny jeans anymore? All that shit like falls away. You're like, oh, I don't really care about like, having the most fashionable clothes anymore.
Do you see, like, I still get it on my like Instagram reels, like, there'll just be like these like mums, so like these street style mums, and they're all, I don't know, in Europe, just looking amazing. Like,
who's doing that? Like,
so I know, I'm like, not long ago, I was taking Belle to the park and looked down, and not only was my shirt on back the front, but I'd spilt toothpaste down it, and I didn't realize.
I know for a fact that there's sticky, weird, like, drool and a sticky dinner all over this sweatshirt. And
like, your priorities change, but in a good way. Like, you care less about what people think about you, because the only person whose opinion you actually care about now is the person you create.
Yeah.
So
and then like whoever's in the circle of taking care of this kid, whoever's helping you, right? Those are the only people that really matter. And all the it becomes very clear like what matters and what doesn't. And it's really incredible. I feel like I really felt like when I was giving birth, like almost like, like in the movie Back to the Future, like the way that it looks when you're in the car and then like he's like speeding through into like a different decade. It feels like you're being thrust through like a time and space portal. Like you actually feel yourself changing as a person. If there were bits of that I could remember in between, like the screaming and the throwing up and the all that.
Oh my God, I did it natural for 12 hours, and I'll never forget. I just literally screamed out, just like, somebody help me! Like this, because you couldn't pay me to be pregnant again. I hated it. I was so sick.
Did you get morning sicknesses? I think that's what happens with girls. You're going to hate me. I had 0 morning sickness, and I had a boy. Like, I'm taking 0. And then, but now, of course, like, he's a little bit high maintenance of a sleeper. But,
I'll hate you on the no morning sickness, because, I mean, I was laying there going, I don't know if I can do this. But then I got a daughter who slept through the night from when she was like 3.5, 4 weeks old. Like
Wow.
I've never had. I think she's woken up twice throughout the night in
That's
2.5 years.
cool.
I'm effectively sleeping more than I ever have.
Wow. You look very well rested. So she never wants to just like have a bottle in the middle of the night or like comfort or snugs. Wow, cool.
No, I mean, she woke up at like 5:20 this morning, which like I don't particularly function that well at 5:20. Like it may as well be in the middle of the night to me at that point, but I can get with it and be like, okay, like let's get a bottle and let's watch Paw Patrol, and
Oh,
then we'll just lay here and get ready to start the day. But
yeah.
no, it means that it is. Look, the turf stuff's not the reason to hate me. They hate me because I've literally never lost a night's sleep with a newborn.
Oh man. That's so funny. Wow.
Yeah.
And it does really, it just changes you. I was, you couldn't pay me to wake up. Like I would have such a hard time to wake up for like a 7:30 gym class. I would like really pat myself on the back all day. Like, wow, I'm a hero. I woke up at 7 today. And it's like, no, I've been up since 4, 3 sometimes.
I was at the park at 7:00 this morning, like, and you're looking, you know, you're saying they're going like, I am like halfway through the morning. But you know, just 3 short years ago, I would have woken up at 9. Like,
Yeah.
had no idea, but I don't know. I mean, it's all better. I just, even just to go back to the Sex and the City thing, like, even though it was always like this character of Samantha that was like, you know, this was so boundary pushing and so awesome.
The fun one. She was the one I think the show wanted you to like the most. Like,
but it's just, you know what? Now being 40 years old, I'm like, would I feel that great about myself if I was like still going out to clubs and like trying to bang young dudes?
you would feel old. You would
I
feel like, I don't know what music they're playing. I'd be going around trying to pull down everybody's skirt, like your coochie's hanging out. Like I would be like,
I just walk around going, I'm sorry, what's an Olivia Rodriguez? I don't know.
Be like, excuse me, I can't help but notice you walked away from your drink. Okay, you need to be holding onto your drink all the time.
Yeah, I'd probably just be spending my time in the bathroom just talking to, giving like life pep talks to the girls. Yeah, was sold this sort of stuff as it's empowering, and I'm like, when you get to that stage in life and you're like, would I actually feel empowered if I was doing that? I don't think I would.
You would be like, why am I wasting so much money on these drinks? Or you have to like talk to idiot dudes to try to get them to buy you a drink. And you spend years trying to get guys you don't like to buy you drinks. That's what your 20s are.
Yeah, and it's just like, even like right now, if one of my friends called and said, oh, do you want to go and have a drink at 9 p.m.? I'd be like, no.
Why? Am I going to black out? Then what's the point? No.
Like, I'm sitting here in my pajamas enjoying a whiskey. Like, I don't need to leave the house. What are you talking about? Wow. Yeah, I think it's actually nice that your priorities change and you evolve, and that you do create, that you learn from mistakes and create boundaries. Like if I was still now acting like I did in my 20s, I would be like, well, I've learned nothing.
Yeah.
So what's even the point?
Yeah, and then like it's sad because there's so many. I wish there were more mother characters on Sex and the City, because they just don't present it. It was not really even presented as an option. It was this is the better, cooler,
it was
more evolved way to live.
It was presented as like, this is what it will destroy your life, and that you literally can't do anything else once you have a baby. And it's like, well, that's just like not remotely true. It's just your life's just busier, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's good.
There's really two types of moms. There is, and my mom was this type. You have kids, that becomes your entire life. You never had hobbies or goals or dreams kind of to begin with. And then when the kids grow up and move out of the house, you have like an existential crisis. Or there's women who like, you have your goals, dreams, that your side hustle that you pursue before kids, while have kids, and then you have that after they grow up.
Which I think that's the right way to be. Like, if I even think back to my nana, so she was, you know, she was born in 1930, married in 1949, had her first baby in 1950. She wanted to be an accountant. that's what she wanted to do. But her dad was not supportive of that. So my nana, who was actually born and raised in Sydney, ended up marrying my pa, who was a very, very handsome farm boy.
Ooh.
My grandparents are a story of like two hot people that met and fell in lust and then went, oh, hang on, we have nothing in common.
Oh.
Too late. Or at least my nana did. And I mean, my nana had 5 daughters.
Oh.
She had 5 daughters to raise, and she didn't love it. Like in her older years, she read books constantly. She was very, very smart. She was just existed in an era where it wasn't an option unless you had really like a really supportive father or husband that allowed it. Like if you look at, say, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that had like both a really supportive father and then a really supportive husband, and so she was able to do something that women couldn't typically do at that time. My nana just didn't have that, and so she did sort of suffer throughout her life. She felt it did sort of drive her crazy a bit. And
maybe that's what the first wave is about, is that you can do something more, that it's okay to have something else going on than being a mom.
If my nana had been like, a woman in the 90s, she would have been one of those working moms. But it just wasn't a thing. So I think if we look at what we have now, it's like, and we go think of that, like, having it all, what does that even mean? It just means working out what kind of life you want to live.
Yeah.
And
you have to work smarter, not harder, and being more selective, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's some things that are really hard. Like, so I've just been sort of on this tour. I went to the UK and the US, and I was gone for 20 days, which is the longest I've ever been away from my daughter. And I was really starting to struggle by the end. I was like, I have to get home. Like, I can't cope anymore. But even just now, like, I just had to drop her off at my mum and dad so I could come and do this. And she's being really clingy with me at the moment. And so it is, you have to just be like, no, mum, you just got to go and do something, and then I'll come back. But, it's good. I want her to, as she grows up, to see me doing other things. So then she goes, oh, hang on, there's lots of things I can do.
Right. And it's very healthy, because then she does not become your only hobby. That's when she grows up, moves out of the house. Like, I had this whole thing with my mom when we grew up, moved out. It was like, you could never visit enough. Once we were visiting, we were never there long enough. When are you coming back? It's like, I'm here now. It just never felt like it was enough. And I felt like it was my job to keep her emotionally sound. And if she was upset, it was my job to get her back up. It was my job to make her laugh. She and dad had a fight. It's my job to make her feel better. That's so much stress to put on a kid. And I think if she had she had friends, but if she had other things to throw herself into.
Did your mom, like, when you were pregnant, would you ask her like things, or even just like with a new baby, and I'd ask like mom questions? She's like, I don't remember. And
I wish. I mean,
my mom was nothing. I got to the point I was like, were you there?
Oh, my mom died in 2018. I wish I could have asked her things like,
oh, I'm sorry.
and I wish I had thought to ask, like, but I wasn't, when she was alive, I wasn't,
She probably would have, because I know 3 other like girlfriends that have said this as well, that they've asked their mums, and the mums like, and then even now, if I think back to some things with Belle, it's only been 2.5 years, and I'm like, someone will ask me, and I'm like, I can't remember. It's like, oh, mum brain's a thing. Yeah, you just sort of forget so many things.
The only thing I do remember that my mom always talked about, she was like, Chrissy, when I would breastfeed you, this is how I stopped. Like, because you would bite me and like look up and then laugh, and that's exactly what my son does. And he's been doing that for like a couple months now. I mean, he has 2 little teeth on the bottom. He hasn't figured out to like chomp with his teeth yet, thank God, because like he does it when he's bored. Like when he's actually hungry and wants to nurse, like he'll focus up. But like if he's just like la la la, then I'll be like, oh, and I'll be like, ah, because you can't say ow the way you want to say it. You have to go ow.
I got
owie, owie.
2.5 months, I think. And then we brought in formula, and my little robust little troll baby. When I call her a troll, because when Belle was born, She had really long hair. Like she had hair. It was like about that long, and it stood up.
Oh,
It was just like this long, literally, like she
like a
came out.
troll. That's cute.
Yeah, she literally looked like a troll. So my little troll baby was just, yeah, she was super robust and cute and just, yeah, very independent and stubborn and determined. Like the universe has
Cool.
sent me my challenge.
Thank you, Anthony. $1 for us. Wow. Um, no, it's awesome. Being a mom is, and I wish I could go back. Well, I think everything happens for a reason. Like I have the perfect, best little baby boy that I would never trade for anything. But I wish I could go back and tell my younger self, like the things that you're all afraid about around marriage and motherhood. Like none of it's actually real. Like the fears are just.
Oh, totally. Like I could tell my 28-year-old self anything, it would be, you're an idiot, and
Yeah.
you are, you're doing this wrong. Like what you think is right is wrong.
Yeah.
And maybe it was like you're not thinking completely for yourself. You're thinking, you know, it was sort of this liberal feminism sort of thing that it was sort of the early days of it. It's definitely not as absolutely batshit as insane as it is now.
Yeah.
I think in the like late 90s, early 2000s, it really was trying to find some truth in something and make women's lives better. And like in some ways, like for some women, it probably has. Like I think that if you a woman who, and there are some who really don't want to have children, like great that there is now, that it is not as, there's not as much pressure. You can, and then like you can live a much more peaceful life that way. So I think that's really cool. But
which is why what you're trying to create with this app is so important, because it's a place where you can go to get like that female mentorship. Like if you can meet other one of the best things about Twitter for me right now is we're not like, I hate to say influencers, but like we're all sort of like, I don't even want to say we're all right wing, but we're all just like moms with the Twitter presence, and it's like a group chat and we talk about literally everything. And
totally. It's the silver lining of this horrible time, because I do think this is probably one of the most misogynistic, if not the most misogynistic time in modern history. I don't think it's probably been this bad in 50 to 100 years. But what it's done is it's made a lot of really ordinary, smart women like find their voice and speak up. And then we've all connected, like when going, like just being in the UK and the US and able to actually meet a lot of them, you know, and I will say, like, it's one of the very few times I've ever experienced where meeting your heroes is actually really rewarding. Like, I mean, I just, in the States, I spent 2 days with Cara Dansky. I don't know if you know who she is. She's this amazing, she's this amazing feminist who was a lawyer, and now she's a full-time TERF. And we went to all of the Senate the Democratic senators' offices in DC, and we're just giving them all the information about why they should vote to support the Protect Women's Sports bill, which just incidentally, it just came out, none of them did. Pretty clear when there was a few hopefuls, but none of them have learned from their huge errors yet. But, you know, you meet these amazing women who are just so smart. And I think back to like in Hollywood when I would meet some of my heroes then, and every single one was disappointing.
Wow.
They are ultimately kind of losers. But
Sal, tell me,
they're amazing.
I heard you on another interview talk about this, and I think it's like one of the most astute observations kind of our time and everything that's happening on. You talk about the Me Too movement, which really I seemed to stop the world in its tracks, and you kind of were a part of Hollywood. You lived in it. You understand it, and it kind of made everybody kind of sit up and take notice. And then it seems, how do we go from that being such a cultural focus to now, oh my gosh, now it's gender ideology has completely taken over, left Me Too in the dust. And it's almost like men have just sort of bullied their way back to the top again, just in a dress this time.
Think about it really logically. The first ever grassroots movement that became so powerful so quickly, that was specifically about women having boundaries, was pretty much instantly replaced by a movement where any woman who had a boundary is a bigot.
Oof.
This is not an accident. My theory is that a lot of the men who were very publicly being Me Too'd were in media, Hollywood, and also like journalistic news media. So they wanted this off the front page as quickly as possible. Do I think any of them care about trans rights? No. I don't think they believe it for a second. What they saw was a way to end the thing that was going to change their lives, and they didn't want that.
A diversion.
Because, yeah, I mean, now it is very rarely do we hear now a story of, you know, and they're all still doing it. I know this. I still have friends in Hollywood. Like none of them have changed. They're still living in this world of you know, they're entitled to women.
It's like a bubble. Yeah,
but it's been the thing, I think, really forever. And this can even tie in with other stuff we've been saying. When men, there's just this image of what, like, if a man is really successful, especially in sort of like a glamorous field, what he is promised is like a beautiful trophy wife woman who will, you know, just sit there and look at him adoringly and blah, blah, blah. Women, with the really successful, we're not promised, like, it's not like we're promised like some gorgeous like Calvin Klein underwear.
Where's my pool boy? Where's I need a masseuse.
Yeah, women, like the image of a really successful woman is she's manless, childless, and has lots of cats. And so there's like not even this respect for like really successful women. It's, don't get me wrong, there's definitely exceptions to the rule. And that's when, you know, you sort of have either these power couples in those industries, or, you know, obviously there's, you know, in just normal life, there's really normal people as well. But just in general, what is sold to especially young people. And so these men get into these industries and especially like when I was there, like 2009, this is just coming off like a post-Entourage world, and they just all thought that that's what their lives were going to be like. And just realizing that, like, it took me a long time to realize that there was like actual misogyny out there. I was not raised like that. I was raised and my dad was very influential in this, of like, you can just, so long as you work really hard and you do it, you can achieve what you want. And like, which seemed like a pretty realistic way to go about doing things. The downside is that when I was in Hollywood, I'd been there for about 5 years. And so at this point, about 3 of them had been really bad. And I was just thinking it was me. I was like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not talented enough. Then I'd watch some of these men like just rising through the ranks, and I'm like, and I'd read their stuff and I'm like, it's so bad.
Wow.
And then I was like, oh, hang on. They're not doing this because I'm not good. They're doing this because I'm female.
Wow.
It wasn't even about how I would present myself or anything. I mean, I would turn up to meetings dressed like Christy from the Babysitters Club. Like I was wearing jeans, Converse, a men's t-shirt, and a baseball hat. Like I wasn't, you know, so it wasn't even, there wasn't some sort of stereotypical reason you could say. I wasn't inviting it. It was just strictly the femaleness at its core. And women are treated differently. Whether we like it or not, but it's just like,
right.
It helps to acknowledge it. I don't, because I think I never want it to be an excuse. Like I don't ever sit there in my life being like, oh, well, there's just misogyny and sexism. So, oh, well, we give up. You just go, no. I'm aware of it. Not going to let it stop me. Let's work out how to navigate it.
Yep. Yeah. Same thing. Like there's a bit of it. I mean, I've been doing stand-up like 14 years, and overall, when people go, oh, is it hard being a female stand-up? That's a question. It's funny to me because it's like, well, I've never been a male stand-up, so I don't know what to compare it to. But I can genuinely go back in my history of doing this and go, there were just some bookers who straight up did not want to book me because I was a woman, and that they just have like a little bit of an old school bias, or for that venue, they booked more men. And then there were times where a booker of a club just hated my guts because I happened to date a guy after she dated him, and that was it. And it's a petty thing that has been held for now 14 years as well, and you're just gonna run into stuff like that. The women will be straight up jealous of you for reasons that make no sense. There'll be cattiness. It'll be like high school in some ways, and maybe, I don't know, who knows if dentists or other industries face that. But I know for sure.
Yeah, it's highly competitive fields
Yeah.
is where you're going to find it the most. But I mean, it's this, whether it's like women in the world or even just like in getting our rights, women have always succeeded in the face of like against far too many men, like a lot of men and far too many women. Like even now when there are women who will sit there and claim that they believe that men are women, it's like they don't. We know they don't. It's just that they've made probably a subconscious choice for survival.
Right.
And
they want to keep those jobs.
Totally. Like whenever sometimes I'm faced with one and I'm really frustrated, and then I just have to remind myself, I'm like, there were women who were against women getting the right to vote. These women have always existed, but we got the vote anyway. So you just go like, all of these women who are like, oh, I have no problem with a man who claims to be a woman in my bathroom. It's like, well, you do.
Until something happens, right?
You've used women's bathrooms your whole life and change rooms. You've used women's spaces your entire life. It's not like you were seeking out unisex ones or just going into the men's. You appreciated it for what it was. And I think a lot of them, when they're picturing a man who claims to be a woman, they're picturing the loveliest man they've ever met, or they're picturing a woman. They're not picturing the worst guy they've ever met who they want a boundary from. And that's just so that they can continue the charade. They're just not looking at it from a realistic
It's like, we get it. You're very progressive. You're very evolved. But like, imagine the most horrible, like sexually deviant dude in there with you or your daughter or like your niece or,
But like, it doesn't even have to have even been that. I mean, that's obviously a huge part of it. But like, I actually don't think I've even ever said this before. Does anyone on this planet think that I want to be alone in a female-only space with the guy who's taken me to court to be in one?
Yeah.
I don't want to be there. This man all he has shown for 3 years now is he has absolutely no respect for my boundaries. I don't want to be around him. That's actually, I don't know him. All I know about him is he is a guy who has no respect for my boundaries. So, I mean, what, are you going to make it illegal for me to have instincts and boundaries? I mean, that's effectively what happens if you put gender identity ideology into legislation.
Wow.
And so that's why you have to fight. Like, I could never sit back knowing, like, when you become aware of it, I couldn't sit back and eventually send my daughter out into a world where she cannot have a boundary from a man or say no to him if he claims to have an identity of woman.
Yeah, that's very scary.
What an easy loophole for him to use.
Yeah, you just have to ignore all your natural, your basic instincts have to go out the window. You're like, oh, we can't hurt this degenerate's feelings, right? Got it.
Yeah, and once you give yourself permission to not indulge the lie, it becomes really easy. Like I only see them as men because that's what they are. If you just go, I'm just going to stay with reality, the most basic reality, and go from there. I think they can, if they want to get up in the morning and call themselves women, like whatever floats your boat. Like, so long as you don't make it my problem, I don't care. Like, if you want to walk down the street wearing a dress, which, by the way, I think that if a man can walk down the street wearing a dress and like fishnets and high heels, because they look ridiculous. Mm-hmm. If you can walk down the street looking that ridiculous, and what the worst things that happens is you get a few looks, probably one of the most powerful and safest demographics in society.
Yeah, that's very much a protected class there. And it's like, you know that they're men because like they're so lazy about their looks. It's like, come on. You want to know what it's like to be a woman? Okay, dude, get in the gym for hours and hours. You got to you have to spend years figuring out your hair, figuring out what outfits and colors look good on you, what shapes of clothing. Like, show up, you can just go to like a cheap, like a fetishy sex store and buy like the cheapest pair of fishnets and go to the rainbow store, get a shitty cheap pair of platforms. No, you have to, that's what being a woman is. You spend decades figuring out what looks good on you.
Well, I think that, like, just because we've got to be so careful of our language in this current stupid zeitgeist. It's like there are effectively what we were establishing is there's no rules on how to be a woman. Like a woman is just an adult human female. It is just a sex-based term. But then if we actually go into what is society expects of women, that's a different conversation. And it's going back to what we were saying earlier with what the young girls are seeing. What OnlyFans and Instagram, there's so much makeup, there's so much work, there's so much tight, revealing clothes. You have to be, you've got to be the cool girl. You have to be, you can't be demanding to men. You can't, don't want a relationship or anything. You just got to be like easygoing.
Just accept literally the bare minimum. If anything, you have to be very cool with being used. Yeah.
And you're an uppity bitch if you actually have a standard of how you would like to be treated. So all of that stuff is if we didn't have to spend so much goddamn time right now just talking about the fact that men aren't women and fighting that, we could actually be dedicating all of our time to being like, okay, we've got a real problem here with what young men and young women are dealing with.
Yes.
Because also there are young men who are sort of getting disenfranchised. And I'm very conscious of it, especially now because this idiot is out of Romania. We've got to find a way that young men don't listen to the likes of Andrew Tate. This is a problem. If we
can't have a sex trafficker being somebody you look up to.
Yeah. And if we don't acknowledge that and go that, okay, there is a real problem here, they're going to just go to the guy who makes them feel empowered. Like it stems from this, like, there's nothing, like, the worst people on the planet are like, what is it? Straight, white, cis het men. I'm like, shut up. No, these are human beings.
Yeah.
Like, we're just going to create more bad ones. Like, there are some really bad dudes out there. Do we want more of them? No, we want less.
I think I look at Andrew Tate. He, to me, is like the equivalent of like a 1% earning OnlyFans chick. Like, to me, they're both the same side of the stereotype, I guess, right? And I'm thinking about something you said before, like this idea, like men are sold, like, okay, if they get out, men want to, like, I think make as much money as they can, not because they'll be guaranteed a hot wife, but like the women will, like, hot women will be attracted to that because what is it? I don't know. 20% of the men attract 80% of the women or something like that. Like, women biologically want stability. They want someone who might even raise their social profile too. So that, a high earner is going to attract that for sure.
I mean, it makes me feel like, if you just think like on an evolutionary level, is that like back in the caveman times, you would have wanted the strongest man. He would have been the most eligible bachelor because he could protect you. So you would have competed for him.
Yeah.
To save you from the saber-toothed tiger. Like, the little weak, I don't know, caveman video playing guy wouldn't be doing that.
And now we have like, well, he's a millionaire and so what? He has 4 baby moms, but he has the resources to take care of me for life. And that sounds like a good deal for me. So
yeah, I mean, like, for better or worse, it's just never how I've lived my life. I really did. I tried to make decisions with guys based on their personalities. Can't say I was successful in that. Says the single mother over here. Didn't work out how I thought it was going to. The man I met and the man I left are 2 very different people. But I tried. I was looking for just like the normal, pure thing. God, maybe I should. Yeah, I remember my nana used to say to me, I used to always dismiss her. She used to say, marry for money, you end up hating them anyway. You may as well get nice shoes. And I'd
that's
be like,
so funny. My mom always gave me the opposite advice growing up. She'd be like, Chrissy, it's just as easy to fall in love with a rich guy as it is a poor guy. That's the only advice I remembered. I also remembered she said, Chrissy, you're wasting the best years of your life doing improv, doing comedy. And
no, I used to dismiss like that from Nana. And then I one time, like last year, when I was going through a really, really hard time with my ex, and I was like, I didn't even get nice shoes out of it.
Oh,
Nothing. Like, I had an amazing daughter, obviously, but like nothing material, which
yeah.
fine. But no, I was always like, I did the Sex and the City thing. It was like, I'll be independent, I'll do everything on my own. And
Yeah. And which is why your app is so important. People need, women need mentors, friends, support groups, and
100%. I mean, even now, like just in terms of like, when you sort of turfing, as we call it, all of us women who support each other, like we all couldn't do it without the support of the other women, because we all understand what like the impact of it in a way that, like, when I do talk to men about it, and they're like, oh, I didn't even think of that. Like it's just different. We're just different. And it's not like a criticism. It just is what it is. And it's like, life is increasingly isolating. We need to be able to have our village. I think that, and finding just people, whether they are on the opposite side of the world, but you connect with them and you can have great conversation. I think that is healthy. Like, I think that the natural evolution, like, obviously we're going to be living our lives online. Like, it's just how it is. Like, anyone who thinks we're going to stop this is, I think, quite ignorant. This is just going to become increasingly normal. And the evolution of, say female only spaces is they'll be in the digital realm. Like, even in the last few years when they played with these metaverse things and everything, that's one of the first stories that were coming out of there, is that like the man avatars were raping the female avatars. And you're like, okay, so we're going to need female only space and, I don't know, prison in the metaverse.
Mhm.
Like, so, being in the digital realm doesn't change human behavior. In fact, it actually highlights it and makes it quite extreme a lot of the time. So I think a female only space is super important. Even just in what I've been going through, like the guy who's taken me to court, he has spent 3 years like watching me from behind a block on Twitter and screenshotting my posts and posting them and mocking me, doing the same thing to my lawyer. And I'm like, and exhibit A of why women would like a place where we can just get away from that. Like, some women be bitchy to each other? Yes, but that is a completely different psychological thing to deal with than men watching you. And
yeah,
so,
it's like the want to dominate your space, what you're creating, just because you can. That's the toxic side of masculinity for sure.
yeah, and I just feel like at its core, like this whole issue, what we're fighting, like it just has to be the right for women to say no. And I think that that's what has been lost and turned against us. And, if you have to fight to get that back, because if you don't have that, like, you really have no other rights. Like, if it just becomes completely normal that, like, legally women have to submit to men no matter what, like if those men just make a declaration, we are going back centuries. And so while we could maybe it could look like everything is better now, it really isn't. Because if you just don't have, like, if you cannot listen to your basic instincts, you literally have nothing.
You're so right. This is an irrelevant super chat from Gavin House. Astrology ladies, I can sit and take your opinion seriously, but then I find out you're all into star charts and shit.
Okay, no, this is actually really funny, right? Because I'm not into astrology at all. However, on Giggle, when it was really big, the number one topic that women would talk about was star signs. Not the number one, but one of the big topics.
Oh my God, really? Wow.
Yeah, there was a lot of astrology. I mean, my best friend's really into astrology, and she'll say things like something will be happening, and she'll be like, "Oh yeah, like the moon is in the fire planet." I don't know.
Right.
No idea. And I'm just like,
I used to be more into it, but
I've always been like a very like atheist rationalist. I'm always pathological with it. I'm not into anything mystical or spiritual.
Oh, I used to be very much into astrology, but for me, I feel like as I've kind of deep into my relationship with God, that has actually taken the place of astrology. I think in a way that's like a bit healthier and based in reality for me.
No, for me, what I have always liked more than anything, I mean, I was very much a really staunch atheist, in the early 2000s. I was very much, reading all of the literature on there, and I felt it was really, it very much spoke to me of just going okay, cool, that's all true and great. But then I did notice that in itself was becoming quite dogmatic, which is when I went away from it. So I was like, the moment anything becomes something where I can't think for myself and try and work something out for myself, I'm not interested in it anymore. So even with feminism, for example, I've had every now and then a feminist woman say to me, they'll be like, oh, well, you can't do that because feminism would say this. And I'd be like, well, then I'm not interested in it because I'm not looking for rules. I'm not looking for anything.
Are you attracted to atheism in a way because it feels like you have more control?
Oh, I just think it's true. I just think that, my position is I've got many, many religious friends. As I've gotten older, I've had more respect for it in the sense that people's individual religion and spirituality is that everyone's different, and how you come to it and what it means to you, totally supportive of that. What I'm against is any sort of systematic indoctrination or dogma, or saying to people you have to believe this. That's what really bothers me. So say in the early 2000s, it was very much, the big fight was having intelligent design taught in schools alongside evolution. It was well, no. And so that's part of why I hate gender ideology, because I see that as a similar thing of you can believe it if you want.
Mm-hmm.
But what you can't do is say that gender ideology is equal to biology. It is not. It's completely incorrect. So what I was just saying before, if you are a man who wants to call himself a woman and that's what gets you out of bed every morning and living your best life, all power to you, dude. Have fun. Just don't make that anyone else's problem. Stay out of women's spaces, stay out of women's sport, and stay the hell out of legislation.
Mm-hmm.
You can be protected by freedom of belief. You can be protected by any sex-based discrimination laws, because this is the thing. You don't even need gender identity in laws, because if a man was being discriminated against for wearing a dress, that is sex-based discrimination.
Wow.
So he can be protected by that. You literally don't need gender identity in law. The only thing it does, and the only group of people it helps, is men who claim to be women getting into female spaces in sport. It doesn't even help the women who claim to be men. They completely rely on their sex-based rights, as do the non-binaries and the cloud genders and whatever. They all rely on their sex-based rights. So when we are over here fighting for sex-based rights, it's for all of those people as well. The only people whose rights we're not fighting for are men who claim to be women. It's because they were never rights to begin with. They're privileges. They should never have them, and have no problem taking them away from them.
Wow. So what are the next steps, Sal, for you, for what's going on with all the legal stuff?
So April 7 is the next hearing. This is a big fight that we're in at the moment. We were always led to believe, and actual submissions were legally put on, that Tickle's legal team was pro bono. Because I've been successful in crowdfunding, they now have said that they want me to pay his legal fees, that I should just crowdfund for that. I'm saying no. At any point, he could crowdfund. He lives in a country with very sympathetic media and politicians and institutions to his cause. He can raise the money to fight for himself if he is required to. Do not think it's my responsibility in any way, shape, or form to pay his legal bills.
No.
I'm in a rights fight. This case was allowed to go ahead because it was deemed in the public interest. It's public interest litigation. Each side covers their own costs. So on April 7, it's the fight for that. I want to win this one so that it's just off the table and we can go forward and only have to focus on the rights, because this has been quite exhausting. At the moment, they're saying they want, there's all different figures, $400,000 one day, $100,000 the next. And I'm like, no. And so, and then it would be this round as well. Basically, it would be millions of dollars that I would have to try and find to pay my legal fees and his. And I don't mind crowdfunding for my legal fees. Don't get me wrong, it is a full-time job. When you're tasked with having to go and raise $500,000 in a year, most people don't earn that. So it's a lot of work. I don't just sit back and just expect people to just give me money. Don't get me wrong, at one point when I no one in media would speak to me. I was panicking. I was like, I'm literally going to have to stand on the side of the road with like a paper cup saying like, men aren't women, give me money.
That would work, I think.
Who's lost their mind. But no, I mean, it's having to travel. It's like, because Australia, like, just our media pool is small. They're against the establishment media is against me. So it's just a lot of effort to raise this money. And I'm so grateful for the support of people around the world who, you know, support me in fighting this. And I think it's important. My legal team is amazing and it's their jobs. I think that they're quite within their rights to charge money for their jobs. I couldn't go and fight for women's rights and then ask women to work for free. I can ask it of myself. My time will come later. That's fine. But I'm not going to. I'm not paying his legal fees. He was awarded $10,000 in damages in the first round, but it wasn't actually anything to do with the app. He was awarded $10,000 because in court, when I was being cross-examined, I laughed at a meme. So this cartoon meme that someone had created. His barrister asked me to look at it. I laughed. It's so surreal to be sitting there in federal court and being told to look at a meme.
Do you remember what the meme was?
Mm-hmm. So he had done an interview on a show here where he had explained that he did not like going into male spaces because he didn't like the smell of them. Someone had created a cartoon of him and a little speech bubble, and it said, I hate the smell of sweaty balls. Hate them, hate sweaty balls. That's what I was told to look at in federal court and was charged $10,000 for the laugh. But so.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And so I'm appealing, but so is he. So he is appealing the decision he won. He wants it upgraded from indirect discrimination to direct. He wants at least $30,000 in damages, and he wants at least $10,000 in aggravated damages. So on top of the legal fees of millions of dollars, he's also trying to get. But in the first round, I mean, he was asking for $200,000 in the first round and only got $10,000, and now it's 40. It's just picking numbers out of thin air. So yeah, that's that fight, and then the actual hearing will be in August. So it'll happen. It'll come around really quickly. Like the days are long, but the year's short kind of thing. We'll get a decision in December. If we win this round, it would be up to the other side to apply to the High Court. If I lose this round, I will definitely apply to the High Court. The High Court is where it's a slightly different fight. It's no longer the sort of he said, she said of it. It is strictly just looking at the law and the legislation. Be really, really dry and boring. But I mean, so it's so hard, you can't plan your life. Like I don't know until the end of this year where it will go. I mean, if we were going to the High Court, we would be applying to go to the High Court on the basis that sex was given no weight in the Sex Discrimination Act, which is quite a good argument to go into the law in the High Court. If we win this round, and so it's the other side that are going to the High Court, they would effectively, their argument would be, well, sex was given weight in the Sex Discrimination Act, and that's wrong. And so it's instantly you see their arguments a lot weaker.
Right.
I've always been told that once we got to the High Court, that was where that's where we can shine. But it's the process of getting there that is exhausting,
a slog,
stressful, heartbreaking. Just it is what it is. But yeah, so basically that's where we're at the moment. We're in a money fight at the moment. I'm saying just pay your own way. I'll pay my way. I'm not asking him for anything. I've never asked him for money. I'm not trying to bankrupt this person. I don't want to destroy his life. As I said, go live it. I wish you well. I don't care. Just stay out of women's spaces in sport.
Yeah, seems pretty easy. And if people want to support you, Sal, they should go to gigglecrowdfund.com and
there's information about the case there as well, and how it sort of applies to other countries, because part of what we're defending is CEDAW, which is the UN's Convention of the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, which is a lot of women's rights law around the world is based on. And at the moment, an Australian judge has taken it upon himself to include men in that. And there is no way that men were included in CEDAW. So it's a complete it's a complete reinterpretation of what was very clear law. So
Right.
it has to be defended, and facts have to be reestablished. Because especially with gender identity stuff in novel law, all of the different jurisdictions around the world are looking at each other and seeing what is going on, what arguments are there, and what precedents are there. So everyone is relying on each other. So a case in Australia does affect the US, it does affect Canada, the UK. We want it to eventually that we're all winning our cases.
And I love how much information is here. It's all about the case, why it matters, the constitutional challenge, and the use of funds. You've laid out everything. A lot of transparency here. And here is where you can go, gigglecrowdfund.com.
I will say this. So when you click on the donate now, it takes you to Give, Send, Go. And so Give, Send, Go, I've met Jacob, who runs it. They're really, really lovely. They are very, very Christian people. I think it's a brother and sister who started it. And so like I think you can see it there that you can send a prayer, for example.
You send a prayer. That's nice.
Prayer. So little atheist me over here, I will say this. I am incredibly grateful for the strange bedfellows that you do meet along the way. We were even on doing the crowdfund, we were cancelled by Stripe and Square, which basically own all of the other minor ones. The activists went for us to try and shut down the fund. And so every step of the way, how frustrating this has been, and Give, Send, Go will promise they were like, we will not shut you down. We will protect you. And then also the Australian Christian lobby has applied to intervene in the case on my side to protect the rights of Christian women, Muslim women, Jewish women, like women who they need sex segregated spaces. So I am very happy about that.
That's
welcome.
Fantastic.
It's really, really cool that we can find, isn't that there's such a huge lesson that probably 20-year-old me would have needed to have. Oh, hey, you can actually find common ground with pretty much everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Give, Send, Go is great. I used them to crowdfund a little bit for my studio update, which, by the way, we're almost, I'm going to debut it pretty soon. I'd sent to the printer all the names of all the people that I'm going to put on the wall. But anyway, they're great because I for sure would have had my my thing canceled by haters and activists.
And they have been so great to work with. There's literally not a single problem. At one point, I was just so terrified. I just didn't know what we were going to do. And they literally did rescue me. And I will be forever grateful and support them. Because GoFundMe would have canceled me within a day. I just didn't even bother. I was I'd seen what they were doing.
Your turf from Rhinoceros. In a world where every feeling and thought has been weaponized to the nth degree, the need for objective truth has never been more in front of us all.
Agreed.
True.
I think there's so much beauty in truth and reality. That's always been my thing. How cool that is when you actually just look at something for how it is. Because anyone else, sometimes you get swept up in magical thinking or trying to live your life how you wish it was rather than how it is. It never feels good. When you actually just go oh, this is who I am and this is where I am.
You save a lot of time, And
you ground yourself. It's so much nicer.
It really is.
I had a thing with that on New Year's Eve, actually. I was Belle was asleep and, I'm obviously a loser who doesn't go out on New Year's Eve. I was just laying on my couch, just thinking back to the year. And I was what a year. Became a single mom, lost in federal court. What have I learned? It's well, I really found out who I am this year and what I'm capable of and how I cope in stressful situations. And I was overall, that was actually a successful year, what I learned about myself. I liked it.
Definitely.
I liked what I learned.
You're an ass kicker, Sal. You're a true inspiration. You're tough as nails. Everybody should go throw you a couple bucks. And I hope this reaches people all over the world who
all I can just say is to everyone who does, if you can't I know times are tough, if you can't financially support, if you just make other people aware of the case, that helps, because the censorship has been just so much, and it's just people not being aware of it. But for this, my gratitude for the support is all I can say is that I won't give up. That's how I can repay and make sure that it's not just women's rights. I think men should be able to have male-only spaces. I think men should be able to recognize a man and go, that's a man, and not have to believe stupid shit in the workplace or whatever. Like, this stuff really does affect us.
Nobody wants at a cigar lounge. Nobody wants women at a mechanic place.
Like, I mean, did you remember with the like LA fires a few weeks ago, and there was the fire woman lady who was like, oh,
Yes.
you know, like the fire like people who look like you, and I was like, no,
that was absurd.
If I turn up to me in a burning building, I'm dead.
No, I need somebody who can lift. It's ridiculous.
Well,
if I'm rescuing your husband, he got himself into the wrong place. That was insane.
Yeah. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Sal. Thank you so much for your time. Everybody follow Sal. Where can they follow you online?
I'm on Twitter, X, whatever it's called. It's Sall Tweets, SALL Tweets. I spell my own name incorrectly, so there you go. Short for Sally, just drop the Y. Basically there. That's the only place that I am. And and I just will give updates on the case as they happen in real time. April 7th, April 8th. That's the next big one.
Awesome. And that's coming up. All right. Well, I'll definitely keep us updated. Maybe we'll do another one as this progresses, but all the best to you, Sal. You're just the absolute best.
Thank you, and I hope you get a good night's sleep tonight.
I doubt it. But thank you to the chat for your comments and questions. Appreciate you all, and we'll see you next